Hi friends, David here from Learn Christmas Lighting, and in this video I want to jump into xLights and share with you, if you've never programmed moving heads before, some really practical tips to programming moving heads, to sequencing them in xLights. Okay, xLights at its core is not a moving light programming software. It's not. A little interesting, and I think if we dive in and take a look at how things work, I can give you some tips in today's video that will make your life a lot simpler. Okay, at the end of the day, it's never going to do everything that we can do like in a stage lighting console in the stage lighting world where I come from, but there's a lot you can do, and the way that xLights works on a timeline with your music particularly makes it amazingly particularly advantageous to program with a xLights show. So, with that said, let's dive in. So here I've got my 4 Dominar beams and I've got my 4 Dominar Lempas. I just pulled up my show from Christmas this past year. And I'm primarily going to work with 2 Dominar beams because I've got those behind me. Okay? Now, a couple things you might find that are kind of interesting that'll help. So say we go and we just drag in a DMX effect on Dominar beam 1. And output is on, and we start to go ahead, and it looks like we brought up some values from the previous video. And we bring up the dimmer. Should be seeing it. I may. Oh, you know what? I did not upload output to my controller yet. Hang on a second. It does help if you have your controller actually set up in xLights. So now that we're there, you can see here, got output on. I can click on this effect and run it. And boom, my lights turn on. Awesome. Looks like I also need to address my second light. Boy, I am not ready, am I? All right, now we're back. We addressed it. We're good to go. So we've got our 2 moving heads here, and I just copied the effect over. Ta-da! And so now we can get going and actually start sequencing. What looks good with moving heads in xLights? That's kind of the question we're trying to answer here today. Okay, so first things you want to know is more often than not, you want to start a song out. I'm going to get out of the way, actually. You want to start a song out moving the lights to their location as to where they're going to be. So I like to go, say, with these 2 moving heads, and maybe I'll bulk edit this and turn it off for these 2. And I'm going to take this effect and just get the rough position where I want them to start. Now, if I don't know where that is, first thing I'm going to do is take the pan and tilt to 128. The reason why is this is the middle of their range with DMX. See that? How the one fixture's right at the middle, the other's not. And so that's where I like to start all my fixtures, because ultimately, I'm just going to start with fixture 1 here. Or fixture 2, rather, whichever one I was actually programming. Because ultimately, you know, that's a great starting place if you don't have somewhere else to start. Now, more often than not, moving heads look great if you tilt them slightly forward, okay? But starting at that place, tilted forward looks better. But again, starting them just at that center point, especially on the pan of 128, is going to help a lot, okay? Because now I can take that effect and say I've got moving head 1 or 2 here set up with that, right? And say I've got, you know, them on my roof like I have here, okay? Now, if pan is at 128 for a starting position, say I want to just fan them out like fingers real nice in the air. That's a great look, right? I can go ahead and say, okay, let's put this one at 138, okay? And then, whoops, and then we'll copy and paste it to this one and put the pan at 148, okay? And you can see there, we've got a nice fan behind me, nice fan on the screen in xLights as well in the preview. And so now, what I usually do here is I just take that starting position wherever I want them to start and extend it for the whole song, okay? Then, and this is my personal style of sequencing, there's plenty of sequencers such as Pixel Sequence Pros. Tim Meyer is kind of our official Dominar sequencer. PPD also uses the Dominar models, but this is how I like to start. And then I like to insert layers above, because then I can go playing through my song, right? And they're in position. They're at a great spot to work. And then I've got some options if I want to do something else with them, okay? The first is I can go to my intensity group, which I am so disorganized here. I've got it down here. And I could just grab an on effect and stick it on that intensity, right? And I think these guys are in the group. They may not be. I just patched this quick. And so then I can play this, and they're not. They're not in the group like they should be. They should be reacting. I don't know why they're not reacting, but I can go to my intensity channel on these two movers, right? And then drag that in wherever I want them to be on. And so now they're always in position. There's never any swing in position. They turn on, they're on for that period, and then they hit the end and they turn off. Pretty simple. The key with xLights, as always, is if something is lower vertically, like my intensity channels for these moving heads, that means they're going to render after this DMX effect. If this DMX effect is all the way, say you have it on the bottom line, then the DMX effect with the dimmer as 0 is going to always win. Even if on a higher level you have the DMX effect, or rather you had the intensity but it was above it, that's going to be a no-go. It's not going to work. Okay, so be aware of that. In terms of movement, what I like to do is I've got, of course, my base position, but then if I want to add movement, I can go over top of it with the DMX effect. And actually, I like to start by copying and pasting where I started, shrinking it, and then I'm going to start to do some movement. Now, movement for pan or tilt, I typically do with value curves. Okay, so watch here. Say I want to do just a gentle pan movement. I can grab one of these value curves here, such as this one, and you see here, now we've got a pretty fast movement. Let's say I could go into this value curve, sure, and I could modify it. For example, maybe I bring the amplitude down to make it a little more gentle. Okay, and now we've got a nice little effect there. Okay, maybe we could go to our on effect at the same time for both of these, and do this end to 0, start to 100, and do a little chase on it, right? Maybe it matches my music. Again, I'm not doing music here, but you get the idea, right? And so I could go ahead and hit update to update both of them. Maybe I offset them halfway. That looks kind of cool. And then set up the movement to be just a little bit longer than that clip is where they're flashing. And then I'm going to copy the movement, paste it on the second moving head, and then what you're going to see is they move in sync with each other when you do that, okay? That's probably not what you want in terms of moving head programming. That's not the best look for sure. And so instead of offsetting it time-wise on the timeline, what I like to do instead is just go into the value curve, and you have this start point, and it's from 0 to 100%. So in this example, with a lot of the times, people use like 4 or 8 movers because it's really musical, right? Music typically happens in 4s. It makes sense. So I would take the first one, start at 0, the second one started at 25, the third at 50, the fourth at 75, and then the fifth would be back at 0, which is the same as 100, etc. That gives you a nice even offset, very musical, very, linear. You can change it up, randomize it, but as you can see there, that makes a much more interesting movement out of the fixtures, okay? What about other types of effects you can do? Well, there's always other types of effects you can add, so let's just say we turn off these pan effects, and we go ahead and grab a new effect. And this time, actually, I'm going to do a color wheel. So with the color wheel, of course, in xLights, it has this great functionality now where you can drag this up and see the colors that the fixture makes. It's really wonderful. Like, we've got a magenta in the unit that's behind my head, and you can see it flashing on my bald bits when I get going there, right? And that's a great thing. It's so helpful programming-wise to be able to do that. But with colors, you can definitely create some interesting effects, even though a lot of these fixtures don't have color mixing, right? So if, for example, and I'm going to turn off the intensity effect here and just make it on. So in this example, I could go ahead here, and I've got it, I say I'm in magenta here at 80, and then I'm at blue just above that, right? Let me switch to the other one. Oops. And as usual, I promise, there are other people that sequence full-time for a living. That's not my gig. And so here I've got it at 70. I could switch between some different colors here. You see that? Magenta to blue. Perfect. And you can mess around with this here a little bit. Say we use this curve. And it's going to start level and end level. So if I look at 84, and then I forget where my next color is, but maybe it's 90, I can press OK. And now I get an effect that bounces between those two values. I don't think I hit my next color yet, though. So we'll just bring it up a little. I know I could look at the manual and know, like, instantly. And so, yeah, it goes blue, yellow, back to blue in a minute. Can shorten it up. So it's cool because now it's like, okay, I could take that and now repeat that a bunch of times. So now we've got a cool blue-yellow flash. Can make it happen to the beat. Copy it to our other heads. Again, you've got a timing offset on this one of up to 100. So, you know, if I was doing 2 fixtures or maybe 4, maybe I put 2 of them at 50, 2 of them at 0. And you can see how that makes a really cool effect. They're not quite lined up perfectly, which is why there's a little bit of overlap. Yeah, there they go. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You can see how that can really make your show a lot better, your display, right? Let's talk about other types of effects. So with the moving beam lights, of course, movement and color are kind of your best bets. Now, with the Dominar Beam IP, you may have seen in my show this year, you can use other assets like the prisms that are inside them to shine them up on your house, to shine them on your roof, etc. And with the Beam IP being that they don't have heat in the beam, you can shine them at your roof, you can shine them at a wall that's really close, and never have to worry about anything getting hot or catching on fire. Unlike with a lamp-based unit where you have that worry, especially not as much with the Prism in, but it still could happen. And that's why we love the Beam IPs. But let's talk about movement effects a little bit. So I showed you before, we can actually go back. We had a movement effect going on pan, right? We did a sign, basically. I don't know where we are. One's in magenta, one's not. That's fine. And that's cool. It's moving back and forth. That's fine. But how do we make it more interesting? Well, if we do both pan and tilt, if we do the same effect, sign, and then set the start of the tilt 50% off of the start of the pan, what we then see, and what I think you can see here, is we then get a circle or a figure 8 type effect that is really popular in stage lighting, where, you know, the light basically figure 8s, okay? So combining different shapes between the pan and tilt can really help you, can really create some interesting stuff, because that's a circle is sine versus cosine, basically, where it's just inverted or they're offset 50%. But you can, there's a lot you can do with that if you start to mess around and get some different shapes that are not, you know, a perfect shape, but different. Sometimes, for example, I like to do like more of a sawtooth on one of them and more of a sign on the other, and it can create some really, really interesting effects. Like here, I'll do it and just do the lazy offset, which means just literally having them offset in time. And now we kind of have them chasing each other, doing something cool. So that's some different ways to make some effects. Another thing I want to leave you guys with, which is really key, is when you are programming and you get them in a really nice position, like here, hey, we've got them in a great position where they're fanned. I'm just doing it with 2 for the sake of this video for speed, but you have it with all 4. You go, okay, now I want to save this. How do I save it? Well, if you want to save an individual effect for use later, there's really a couple ways you can do that. Okay, the first is that you can go in here in the DMX model, and big shout out to Keith Wesley for doing this, and you can save as state and give it a name. So Dominar 1 fan, say. And then I could create a state for Dominar 2 fan, right? And then the cool thing about that is you can load from state. And so, for example, we find Dominar 2 fan. Now states are, as you can see, by fixture there, but it allows you to load those up really quick and be off and running. The other way is that you can create an effect preset, right? Pull up your effect preset. I've got all my PPD ones in here. Big shout out to them. I love the Sequence Club. They didn't pay me to say that. Create a new preset. Moving head fan. Boom. And so now I could go ahead and apply that preset and bring it from the effects presets. So there's really two ways to do that, to save stuff for later, which can be really helpful, especially with the moving heads, because a lot of the other effects don't work incredibly well with it. That being said, some things do work well. For example, I obviously created this effect here with the on effect, but I can totally go and use, for example, the spirals or the single strand can also work really well to create those kind of effects. Okay, you can see it happening there across these 4 lights. For some reason on my new custom model that I was just working on, the Dominars, it's not activating them, but it gives you that ability to flash across them. Okay, so with that, guys, I think I'm going to leave you there for the day because I don't want to bore you with a super long video, but I do want to thank you for watching. And if you're new to xLights, if you're new to programming moving heads, then a couple things for you. One, if you're brand new to this hobby, head over to learnchristmaslighting.com, grab our free guide, the 3 things or 4 things I really want you to know before you buy anything in this hobby. It's going to walk you through what to buy so you don't make mistakes, and it's yours free when you enter your email there. And number 2, if you're looking for moving heads, check out the Dominar Lempa and Dominar Beam IP. There's a reason why we've become the #1 trusted name in this hobby as well as commercial. Our fixtures have a great track record. They're high quality. And if you have any issues, guess what? We've got people in the U.S. that fix them. So, but that's actually pretty rare. So with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video as long as you're subscribed. Thanks.